Welcome and thank you for choosing True Grit, the show about what it really takes to rise, rebuild, and stay the course when life hits hard. I'm Cleesh Morrow, a coach, storyteller, and believer in the kind of strength you can't fake. Around here, we talk about real people, real stories, and the lessons that shape us, from resilience and mindset to health and healing, because grit isn't about grinding harder, it's about who you become when you don't quit. Let's get into it. Hello. This is exciting stuff because it is the first full episode of True Grit podcast that I have recorded. I have done other podcasts of being guest on those on other people's podcasts. So this is the first time that I'm getting to do my own podcast and get to kind of go with whatever direction I want to go in. For the most part, these episodes are going to be around kind of more like the true grit, the grittiness that is just our lives, our stories, what makes us who we are. Different things too rolled in there. I'm going to be talking about fitness. I'm going to be talking about nutrition. I'm going to be talking about mindset, motivation, discipline, what all those things mean when you put them all together to create this very holistic lifestyle. And this is what I teach in my coaching. This is how I guide people. And I have so much information that I want to get out there. And I have found that I would put them into captions and they'd become this whole, basically a blog. So I needed to start doing these podcasts, and I was really excited to hear that other people wanted to hear what I have to say on these matters. And my hopes are just that I can pour this into you and that you're inspired and that you learn things and that you can take action. That's the other thing. You got to take action on these teachings and apply them to your life. And if you do, you're going to see just a whirlwind of success. So jumping right into it, I have a multi-pillar approach, and I am calling it my MOVE method. MOVE standing an acronym that stands for motivation, optimization, visual, and embodiment. And I will go over those things more in different trainings that I'm putting together, but that's really the foundation that I want to lay out there. And so for the purpose of this podcast, this episode, I'm going to go over muscle, fitness, basically, mindset, and nutrition, not necessarily in that order. But to start off with fitness, my heart goes out to people with trying to figure out really any of these things, but I know what it's like to go through this and try to figure out what's the right thing for me. And I also really want to help dispel a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of misunderstandings, especially for women. It is so wild to me that we have gotten so far off course of what we as women are, how we should be training. And there's all of these mixed bag of approaches, and we've seen it too throughout the years that has got women thinking that if they lift heavy, they're going to get bulky, they're going to look like men, and it's just insane. And I'm going to use myself as an example of a woman who lifts heavy. I lift heavy circles. I pick them up, put them back down, rinse and repeat. And I am not bulky by any means. I wish I was. I'm one of those people that would love to put on a bunch of muscle. I know how difficult it is to put on muscle. You have to do this in a way that's very deliberate, and it gets away from women. But let me explain to you the why. I think that's even more important. Before I get into the whole what we should be focusing on, let's get into the why. And it is about longevity. It is about resilience. It is about your health in years and hopefully decades to come. And it comes down to building muscle. Muscle is your fountain of youth. It is your pain relief as well. And it is your answer to a slowing metabolism. Now, I was just reading up on a study that came out recently, I believe. In fact, that's how I came across it. Talked about how our metabolism doesn't actually slow down as we age. It slows down because of our natural tendency to lose muscle as we get older. So indirectly, our metabolism slows down as we age, but it's more of that muscle loss, and which is why we also have to be more intentional about building muscle. Now, and let me cement this too for you with my own lived experience. I've spoken before about growing up with 2 autoimmune diseases and then cancer and all these other things that came with it. I remember being 15, 16 years old, maybe even going into my 20s, and just worried about how my quality of life was going to look like when I got older. Because here I was, especially when I hit my 20s, I could be in really awful pain, especially during the wintertime. It's true what they say, once the weather changes, you can feel it in your bones. And that was especially true for me. And I just remember thinking, man, if I feel like this in my 20s, how am I going to feel in my 40s and beyond? And then it did continue getting worse. My pain, and particularly during the wintertime, it would just keep getting worse. And now I was in the gym on and off. I would do the whole cycle of like, okay, I'm going to get back into it. And then 3 weeks later, maybe sometimes I could tough it out and make it to 3 months. But usually, if I did it to 3 months, then some life thing would come along and would derail me. And, I'm the stereotypical story that just about everybody goes through. So I kind of was able to maintain a little bit, but I knew I was losing a lot of strength too. And I was getting into more and more pain. And I think it was just a few years ago. I mean, my knees were so flared up. I'm sitting there just hanging out with some friends. We're hanging out in their backyard. And I remember it was still cold weather too. And I had to keep getting up and moving around. I was about ready to be in tears because the pain in my joints was so bad. And to back up, my experience with autoimmune diseases, I had a juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, which explains the pain the residual pain I still get sometimes in my joints, even though that is technically in remission, cured basically. The damage is still there. I also had dermatomyositis, which is an inflammation of the muscles. So a lot of muscle atrophy that came along with that too. A lot of things working against me as I grew up and didn't put on muscle as easily as the other kids, which now as I'm thinking out loud, actually, I look at all these, 20 something year olds who maybe didn't do that much, maybe a little bit of gym, or they were an athlete or something. In the 20s, they've got these fantastic bodies. And I just know that I was still so scrawny. I just didn't have that leg up during my earlier years of putting on that muscle when it was so easy. Like your body was just growing and adapting so easily. So here I am with even less muscle mass and just these knees and my elbows, my joints would just be flaring up and almost putting me in tears. And I'd have to be kind of moving around. I couldn't stay in one position for very long. And then something happened. My husband got very jealous of his father, so my father-in-law, who decided in his 60s that he was going to get in shape. And I'll side quest on that story in a little while. But we found out what he was doing, though. He was doing these 5x5 proms, which, if you're not familiar with the 5x5s, it's the 5 big lifts. So it is your squat, your bench, your overhead press, your bent over row, and your deadlifts. They're all very functional exercises. You could basically do these exercises indefinitely, and they would be it's a full body workout, and you alternate them on different days. But really, it's just 3 days a week, though. You mix up a couple of them, and it's 3 days a week. You get these full body workouts, and you're lifting heavy. And again, they're functional. Your deadlifts, you're reaching down. It's like picking up groceries. Your squat, that's getting up and down out of the chair. Your overhead press, that's putting suitcases in the overhead compartments. All these very functional exercises. And when my husband started doing these, I thought that wasn't going to be enough. I was of the mindset that you work out 5 days a week, 6 days a week, if you really want to be in this top shape, because that's what the magazines tell you to do. And that would also lead into self-sabotage too. If you only work out 2 days a week, then you're like, oh, I'm not getting anything done. But so seeing him do these 3 days a week, I was like, okay, well, it was clear that he was getting stronger. And then the muscles started coming on, and it was just like mind blown. All right, I need to learn more about this whole system. So I started getting into it. And after a while, like, yes, I was definitely getting stronger. I was putting on some muscle. And the biggest thing, the pain it went away. And I thought that it was just incredible. Well, fast forward to when I started taking on clients and I would have people coming in to work with me, and they all had similar stories. My doctor says, come back to me when you're ready to go under the knife. They wanted to put injections in. They're wanting to just run X-rays on the knees and the back and all these things. And I'm just saying, like, this isn't necessary. At least we can give this a try. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we will work slowly. So that's a caveat, though. Before anybody freaks out that I'm putting people under, heavy weights right out the gate when they've got all this pain. That's not how we start. We usually will start with dumbbells, or maybe we even start with bands, or even body weight too. It has to work with the person's limitations, but within weeks, we would see a dramatic improvement in their pain levels to the point where they were gone. Now, this isn't a cure all, but it's a cure most. And this is why I'm so passionate about like that. Dr. Real Lyons, she is the author behind Forever Strong, and she has coined the term muscle is medicine, and it truly, truly is. And I'll tack onto that as muscle is medicine, barbell is the prescription. And so I'm so passionate about that, and I feel, and I know that this is the message that needs to get out to people more and more. I'm in this world, and so I hear it all the time, but I realize how many people still haven't heard it. And as more and more of us coaches who have learned fitness in a very different way from most mainstream, what we grew up with, and what we've seen applied, how we're doing things differently, as more and more of us get to know these techniques, the more people we can reach, the more people we can help, because that's the ultimate mission, is to help people not have to face down this painful existence as we get older, that's filled with medications, that's filled with doctor's visits and surgeries that all could have been prevented, and prevented pretty easily. We're talking 3 hours a week, 1 hour at a time, 3 times a week. That's what you have to commit to your gym sessions. Now, there's other things that we can get into, walking and sleep and all that. But for the purpose of this episode, talking about muscle and how this is our responsibility. And ladies, listen up. They talk about perimenopause, menopause, and how that's just the end of it. You're never going to be able to have a flat tummy again, and just welcome those saddlebags on, and all these negative talk, and about how your metabolism is going to tank. Well, it tanks because we just eventually start to have less energy. We're moving less. We were also raised in a culture that sold us pink weights that weighed 2 pounds, and that we're supposed to work out with these because we're afraid of getting bulky. And again, like, going back to my story, I'm 115 pounds. I'm 5'4". I am not bulky. I maxed out last time I tried to set my personal record. I maxed out at 225 pounds doing a deadlift. I do not look like I can deadlift 225 pounds. Men will come over if they see me. They see me going to pick up something heavy. Before I even have a chance to do it, they want to come over and save me and help me out. And I'm like, no, it's okay. And I appreciate it. Like, it's really sweet. We can get into feminine and masculine and all that stuff. And I'm not trying to be like that, but it's just that I train for a purpose to go ahead and be able to take care of myself and do these things. Am I side questing? I might be side questing. But actually, let that be the inspiration, though, that you might not always have help around to take care of these things for you. So being able to be independent in any situation is just a lifelong goal. Ladies, you're not going to get bulky. The moment you start getting bulky, here's the thing, just stop. You can just stop working out as hard as you were. You can dial it back a little bit. You don't have to go to those extremes, but let me just dare you to try to get bulky and see where that takes you. Because what is ultimately going to happen is you're going to get those nice tight curves that everybody wants. Your skin's going to look better. Your joints are going to move better. Everything's going to be better if you train for muscle gain. And I'm not talking about HIIT. I've already talked about the barbell stuff, but I'm not talking about, high intensity interval training. I'm not talking about cardio with rates where, like, if you remember Curves and all its purpleness, glorious purpleness, how you would run circuits around and yeah, it's basically just cardio with weights. I can get into the benefits of cardio at some other point, but cardio is not a great way to lose weight, and it's not necessarily what you want to be including in when you're trying to put on muscle to, or as a substitute for putting on muscle. And the reason I say that is because I used to think like, oh, I can get on the Stairmaster and then that would count as my lower body workout. No, that's not. That is not the case. As you can tell by my ass, I was on the Stairmaster quite a bit, and I do not have the ass of somebody who, climbed so many steps, because really I needed the muscle adaptation from the heavy circles. Anyway, before I start going down a nice boring path, I want to pivot now to sustainable nutrition, the other thing that I teach. And when I say sustainable nutrition, I talk about what can you do that's going to last you for life. When I first start working with a client, a lot of times they start thinking that I'm going to be cutting out all their things. They get really, really nervous. Well, I love my cookies, or I like chips, or I love dessert after dinner. And they're usually really relieved when I say, great, we can keep those things. We're just going to learn how to be smarter about them, but we're not even going to tackle that right away. What we are going to do is we're going to up your protein. And a lot of times I hear from them saying, well, my protein's great, until I start having them log it and they show me pictures. And a lot of us, most of us miss the mark when it comes to our protein. And that's also because, well, we're a very carb centric society. Prepackaged, everything prepackaged ends up being carbs. I know I'm making a very broad generalization, but that's what most people tend to gravitate towards. You see the snacks, everything's it's a high carb diet. And that has been the host of all these other issues that we see. Again, that's a podcast for another time, multiple podcasts actually, if I'm going to be honest. But yeah, I'd just have to laugh, because especially early clients too would be friends of mine. So we'd be going out to dinner, or we'd be at an event and they'd be piling up food and stuff. And then later on they go and grab the dessert and they'd be like, no, don't look at me. Don't look at me. And I have to laugh. I'm like, go ahead and have the chocolate cake. You're okay. But what we focus on in the beginning is just increasing that protein. And I have to say that anytime that I have started having a bit of a sweet tooth, if I just go and have we have meat sticks and stuff as snacks in here, or I mean, no shame, I will go and grab a handful of deli meat at any given moment. I will even turn that into a little mini sandwich and stuff. I'll wrap cheese around it and maybe throw some lettuce in, whatever, if I'm just whatever. But I will do that first, and then I just let it sit for a minute, and usually the sweet tooth craving will go away after that point. And it's just because I'm hungry and I'm looking for easy energy. It's a body's response. But again, so many things I want to get into, but I won't side quest too much on you. But yes, sustainable nutrition. I've had many debates with people online who do not understand what nutrition, lifestyle of sustainable nutrition that supports you in the long run, what that actually looks like. So they want to argue with me when I say, no, let's bring in some starches in the evening. That'll help with your rest. And they think that's the worst advice ever. But when really it will help calm the nervous system and it will give you better rest. Timing is important. We can get into all these nuance and stuff. But it is just mind-blowing, though, how much misinformation is out there. I think that I've probably stressed that enough, though. But I don't want to be knocking on any of the extreme diets. And for some people, they have a place. For some people, they really respond well to carnivore or keto diets. Some it may be necessary for them. There's a time and place for all these different types of diets. But for the general population, it is just eating whole foods. And how do we make that easy? Well, have you ever heard of shop the perimeter of the grocery store? Shop the whole perimeter, and that is usually where all of your produce is, so your fruits and veggies. That is where you're going to find your meats, you're going to find the dairies, you're going to find the fresh baked breads, or the deli. That usually is all around the perimeter, and then you're avoiding the prepackaged, overly processed crap that is what's weighing us down. Literally, and emotionally, if we're going to be honest, emotionally it weighs us down. That is also how we get around the whole eating healthy is expensive, because it actually isn't when you eat whole foods. It is expensive when you eat healthy, quote unquote, healthy processed foods. And those are usually like, oh, it's the organic fruit snacks. It's the organic, keto friendly granola bars. Like all of those things are processed and they weigh up the price tag on any of that versus if you go and you get, again, a whole food snack. Now, the interesting thing when we get into nutrition, though, is that this is the part that I feel people have the most difficulty around. I would have them showing up to their workouts and they would be doing great with that. They'd be progressing, they'd be getting stronger, they'd be getting less aches and pains and all of these amazing things. But the weight, their fat percentage wouldn't really be budging though. And it was coming down to their habits around nutrition. And that's what I'll get into in a minute about mindset and the work that I do with all of that. But we cannot neglect our nutrition. You can't just go to Ozempic. You can't get on these GLP-1s and just think that everything's going to magically go away. Even look at there's a documentary that's now out there on Netflix of The Biggest Loser. And honestly, I haven't watched it. I've just seen the previews from it. I already know the methodology that they used on those poor people and how it just flies in the face of my coaching style and other great coaches who do the opposite. And they set these people up the way that they trained them for failure in the future, because it's just such this massive overhaul that they did, and this, like, some of the mental abuse, and but confusing that as being motivating, all these things that if you really take a pause and look at what happens in the aftermath, then you'll understand what I'm getting at. It's not about losing everything super, super quick. Everybody wants it instantly. That's the kind of world that we live in now. Everything's instant gratification. So to go back to Ozempic, I had a friend just recently. She had talked about it online maybe about a year ago, that she was considering possibly getting on one of the GLP-1s to lose weight. And I think I spoke up a little bit about and there's some really big pros to it. I'll get into that some other point. But for the purpose of the weight loss here and the ones who chase it so quickly, I remember having that moment where I gave her some of my insight, and she never went with it. But she texted me not too long ago and said, wow, I have done a complete 180 on my feelings about this. I have a friend who's over here right now. She's asleep on my sofa right now, but she has gotten on Ozempic. I'm using that as a general term, but it was a GLP-1. Most people are familiar with Ozempic. She's been on it. She's lost a ton of weight, and she's like, but she looks awful, and she could barely eat anything. And we were hanging out a little bit this afternoon in the pool. We didn't really do much, and she's wiped out. She's snapping on my couch. She has no energy. I can't believe it. Like and she thinks that she looks great, but I'm just looking at her. She just looks so unhealthy. And I said, yeah, it's the melted candle. People will start to look like a melted candle when they lose weight that quickly. And she was like, oh my God, yes, that's the best description. And because what's happening is that you're cutting calories so dramatically, so drastically. And you lose, circle it back around, you lose muscle. The muscle that gives you that structure around underneath the skin. So you don't get that droopy sagginess. It also allows you, when you lose it a little bit slower, it allows the skin to bounce back. You're also going to be able to have more nutrients too. So that's the other thing. So I can guide people through, if they want to get on Ozempic or GLP-1s. Again, I'm just using general terms, but GLP-1s, what they are. If they want to get on it, or they have to get on it because they legit have blood sugar issues too, I can guide people through that. But my number one advice, though, is up your protein and bring in resistance training. This lends itself to the future you as well. As you lose the weight, that is going to serve you well, keep you healthy as you go along with it. And then it's going to help you keep that weight off because you've changed the lifestyle. And that's where it ties back in with the nutrition that as I began, like working on your nutrition is so important, where it becomes a way of life where you're not even really having to think about it. It's just a thing that you do. And yes, there's a lot that can go into it. And I'm going to get to that point here in a minute, but I can't stress enough how important the nutrition is, and especially too if you go on these like get fit quick things, if you're not putting in resistance training and protein, you're doing yourself a disservice. So that's always what I like to have my clients work on first, is just upping the protein when it comes to their nutrition. We don't cut anything else out. We just up the protein, and it does magical things. It makes you fuller. It makes you crave less sweets. It will actually put you into a calorie deficit in and of itself because you are eating less calories overall. But yeah, I can't stress it enough. Increasing your protein, that is the biggest thing. And I know it's the first episode, and so I'm repeating myself that there is going to be more on this to come. I'm just excited that I can pour this information into you. I'm a little off script at times. It's just kind of whatever is coming up for me that I want to share with you. So that is my just scratching the surface when it comes to nutrition. But if you have any takeaway from this, just increasing your protein and introducing whole foods into your diet, unprocessed, unpackaged, single ingredient things, and that's going to make a world of difference. And to do it slowly. Don't try to do everything at once and it overwhelms, and then you just go, I'm going to go have the bag of Cheetos. So this brings me into my other major pillar with how I work with clients, and that has been mindset. I think I've lost some people as I went and did this shift because it is so unique and unexpected when you think of a personal trainer, nutrition coach. That's not to say that other coaches don't work on like getting your head in the right space, and a lot of times they'll use the mindset, but it's not in the same way that I am using it. I went through a health mindset certification course, and if I can just talk about my own experience with that for a moment, because of how transformational that has been in a very short period of time, where I was able to get out of my self-sabotage, where I was able to get out of negative self-talk and start really believing in myself and my own abilities, and picking up on these repetitive thought patterns that weren't serving me, because I had always thought that I had a growth mindset. I love learning. I want like all of the certifications. I want to get all of the certificates. I want functional testing. I want, oh God, there's so many to list it. But I love to learn new things. I'm open to new experiences and ideas too. I have had multiple times where I thought something was really, that this is the right thing, this is the correct thing, and being open to hearing from other people and learn the evidence that was contrary to what I thought was the correct thing. And I've gone back and said, oop, I was wrong on that subject. My mea culpa, that sort of thing. So I've always thought that I had a growth mindset because of that. Going through this program, realized I didn't have the growth mindset in its truest sense, which basically you've got growth mindset and you got fixed mindset. To put it succinctly, it's a positive mindset and a negative mindset. Now, this positive, this growth mindset believes in change. It believes that you can change. It believes that things are possible. And there's a lot that can go into all of this too. And how we talk to ourselves, how we talk to other people, how I coach people as well, how I work with them through the roadblocks and their habit stacking and all these things, and things that I've been able to work on for myself. Now, the fixed mindset, that negative mindset, is just everything's the same, and you've just made up your mind on this is it. And it's not until you start to hear this other way of thinking and these other exercises that you can start to really catch it. So for me, and I can compare being an entrepreneur to somebody who is now working with a coach or struggling with their own health and wellness. And it's a very unique thing too, because I know a lot of people who are very high achievers and they do amazing things, but the first thing that goes out the door is their health and their dedication to their nutrition and working out. And that's me. Even now as a personal trainer, I have to make it into my calendar and make sure that I go to the gym, because otherwise I will just sit there and keep working, working, working. I love what I do and I have so many ideas and I want to go through all these different things. And I will just be like, nah, I work out 3 days a week. I'll just make it tomorrow, or I'll make it up on the weekend. And then something will happen too that day. And I kind of lose that cushion. And now I'm only made it into the gym once that week rather than 3 times. It's a slippery slope. And so, anyway, getting back to how I can relate with with the business side of things, here I was just thinking like, oh, if I could only make, a couple grand a month, like that would be fantastic. Wait, what do you hear from other coaches though? Like that they're making, or that the possibility is you making fantastic money. Well, I didn't believe that I could do that for myself. And I had to go through these mindset shifts and really ask myself these questions of like, well, why can't you? And man, there's so many cool exercises that I can throw out there, but I'm not prepared with notes, and I'm going to side quest. That should be like hashtag side quest. That's my go-to phrase half the time. As an entrepreneur, though, you can get in your own way. You start to self-sabotage. You have negative self-talk. This isn't working. Oh, you start getting impatient. You're not seeing the results that you want to see when you're putting all this effort in, and it's just not getting you anywhere. So you see the parallels though between that and somebody who is wanting to get their fitness under control and their nutrition under control. I can apply what I've been learning and working on with myself with people that I'm coaching. And I solidify this actually really in the beginning. At least that's what I'm doing now. I thought I could kind of weave it in as we would go, but it has to be solidified right at the beginning. And a lot of people are just really like, they don't know what to make of it yet. So again, I'm just new with it. I have totally pivoted with how I message everything, how I'm speaking about things, what I want people to be focusing on has changed. And so it's thrown people off a little bit, but hopefully they're starting to perk up. Hopefully it's starting to resonate, especially as I've been finding my voice and how to explain these things. But in the beginning now, I have people do an application, and that actually starts getting you into that healthier mindset, gets you excited about your goals. And then the consultation and some more initial questions to go over, and setting goals, but setting goals in a more meaningful way, where we really start to draw in your why. Really get to focus in on what that is to you and who you are and who you're becoming, the path that you want to be on, and let that be an anchor. And what I've found through additional research too is this is what will root you into your motivation. And if I can go on this other tangent when it comes to motivation. Motivation is another one, just like mindset, that can be a little bit more of a general term. There's specific motivation that I'm speaking of. Now you got extrinsic, that's your outside motivation. So that is the, hey, I have a wedding coming up, or I've got a class reunion coming up, and I want to be in the best shape possible, and I'm going to do all the things and crash diet and blah, 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 blah. So I can be that ideal body type. I'm not talking about that motivation, the external factor. I'm talking about intrinsic, the internal monologue that you've got going on, the motivation that taps into your why, into your identity. And this word identity has been coming up for me a lot. When I was asked what I wanted to be known for, like what's one word that I would want to be known for, I didn't know really. I thought it was motivation because of how passionate I am about learning this and transferring it on to other people. But the word identity keeps coming up, and I've had to warm up to that a bit more. But it really is important. It is your identity, and it's looking at your past, your present, and your future. So helping clients and helping people, and if it's through this podcast too, with helping you tap into your why, who you are, who you want to be, and using your past experiences too to help root yourself into the person that you're becoming, where you're grabbing that evidence that proves to you that you do actually have what it takes to be that person. And then also looking at that future person and thinking about how that person is living their life, how he or she wakes up in the morning, how he or she gets dressed, what they eat, what he or she does on a daily basis to live this life, this this ideal lifestyle that you see for yourself, and starting to embody that in the present too. Oh my God, there's so much I want to go over. In case you couldn't tell, I can go on about this forever, which is why I'm doing this podcast, if I haven't stated that enough. But rooting yourself into that is what is going to create that motivation that everybody is seeking. They think that it's all this external stuff. It's alarms. It's going to be putting things out in a certain way or whatever. Like, that's all habit stuff. And again, that's all part of the mindset work too, because it's all behavioral change as well, and how our habits affect us and how we can change that, what it takes to change those habits and introduce new ones, get rid of old ones too. So keep an eye out for those podcasts in the future. But I did want to touch on the mindset work that I get into so that people can better understand what I mean by mindset and what I'm doing when I talk about mindset. It's not being this cheerleader hype type person that just tells you to go crush in the gym, or when you fall off for a week that they either yell at you. I love that one. I love that whole, like, I'm just being honest. You've got to face the hard truths, and I'm here to shake it up and not be your best friend. I'm here as your coach. Like, oh, there's so many things that are wrong in this space, and I do feel it's my duty to step in here and say, no, that's not how we do it. That's not helpful to people, and that there are answers to your prayers out there when you're trying to do better by yourself and improve your health and improve your situation. And I will close with this too, that when we make that time, we make that effort, and if we make that investment too into coaches, into somebody who can guide you through the muck and the mud that is all this misinformation and this confusion, and your own thoughts too that get in the way of your progress. Investing in a coach will help you get there so much quicker, and you also show up more for yourself. I know that as I've invested in mentorship for myself, having it be not a free offer and a little workshop or $40 thing, penny pinching, and just trying to like stitch it all together and piecemeal it all together with all these different things, and it just makes you more confused in the long run. Going with a coach that knows how to get you to where you want to be, who is aligned with your goals, you show up differently. I know I do. I know I've been showing up differently since I've been investing in a coach and into a mentor to learn how to better myself personally and my business. So I love this. It's all it's holistic lifestyle coaching that I find myself doing now, where I realize that if we start tackling your fitness and your nutrition and getting you into a healthier mindset too, and you start to feel those changes, how that bleeds over into the rest of your life, how that pours into the people around you as you become a better version of yourself, a more vibrant version of yourself, as you build this legacy of health, and to be a moment of inspiration too for your friends and your family around you, and seeing the changes that you're making and the dedication that you're making towards your health and being that better version of yourself. And everything else will start to fall into place for you too. Other things that you didn't even think that could be connected to your fitness, like, just starts doing better. It'll be your relationships. It'll be your opportunities showing up more and more. But I'm going to conclude for now. I'll let that wrap up this episode, and I am excited to keep recording these and getting more information out to you, and let this be your message to have a phenomenal day and to start looking at things a little bit differently and start taking your health a little bit more serious and actually making it the priority. All right, take care. Thank you so much for being here on True Grit. I truly appreciate it. If this episode sparked something in you, share it, subscribe, or leave a quick review. It helps more people find these conversations. For more ways to connect, head to true-grit.fitness or come say hi on Instagram at true.grit_bold.wellness. I'll see you next time with more stories, lessons, and a little bit of grit.